Hi, my name's Ishmael and today we're going to be talking about the step-by-step process of buying a house. So, first off, what do you need to do to buy a house? Well, first you need to determine your budget. By that you will probably be looking at about a 10% deposit if it's buying a house for yourself, or a 25% deposit if you are buying a buy-to-let. Then you obviously find the property. Once you found the property, then you can negotiate whether you can get discount. Negotiation is not in this video, so we'll go into that in another video. Once you've negotiated the price, you'll find a mortgage broker, make sure you can get the correct mortgage for that property. Then you'll get the property valued, and while doing the valuation you might also want to look at a home buyer's report or a full survey. I would go for a home buyer's report if it's your first property. If there's any signs of damage or you're unsure and you haven't really dealt with property before and you really don't know what you're doing, you might want to do a full structural survey, because there could be various things. Cracks near windows could indicate movement, cracks across the house could indicate subsidence. Generally, if the crack is very small, it won't be subsidence. You might still want to have a look at a full survey. Once you've got your survey done and your mortgage has been approved, you'll take the paperwork to the solicitors. Now, with the solicitors process, this is where we're going to get into a little bit more detail about the process of the purchasing through solicitors, because this is the part where it can get complicated, can take a lot of time, and I've had a few people speaking to me recently about what do you actually do with solicitors, what are the processes, how long does it take, when do you put offers in, when do you give them deposits, and so on. So, when dealing with a solicitor, I would always, if possible, go to a conveyancer, not a solicitor. If you go to a solicitor, sometimes they're fixed price, sometimes they're not. Quite often they say they're fixed price, and then they add pounds here and pounds there and this and that, and they say, yeah, it was fixed price, but it's not quite as simple as we said, this, that and the other. I've had that recently with a solicitor who I was told it was a fixed price halfway through the remortgage. Then they decided to say, oh well, it's a remortgage, but we're going to have to get a valuation, which I knew. But then they started adding other costs in, things like tenancy agreement. Because I had a tenant in there, they had to make sure that the tenancy agreement was up to standard to their mortgage, and they had to do various other checks on the tenancy agreement and the rent rates and the rents, and they said it was one price, but realistically they ended up charging me a lot more than my conveyancer said. Now, my conveyancer that I used before was quite a bit more. They were £50 more on their quote, but I know next time I will be using that conveyancer, because I've done 4 property deals with that conveyancer. Every time he has, for some reason, every single deal he has always charged me £3 more, and that's because there was a document, the title deeds of the property, which were unreadable. So every time he's got title deeds, he's charged me £3. He always emails me first, and he charged me £3 on all 4 deals. That's the only extra charge I've had from that solicitor, from that conveyancer. Every other solicitor I've dealt with, or I've heard about, if you deal with solicitors, they always charge more. My sister had it, my parents had it, some friends had it, and a few property investors I know have had it as well. So I would always stick to conveyancer if possible. They generally also are a lot quicker, and they're cheaper because they are not trained to the same solicitor's level. They need a different qualification, and they also specialise in what they're doing, and because they do it day in, day out, they're normally quicker, more efficient and cheaper. So, deal with this conveyancer. What are the actual steps that you go through? Well, once you've made the offer and the offer's being accepted with the estate agent or with the vendor if it's vendor or direct, the seller, then you would send your paperwork to your solicitor and they would send their paperwork to their solicitor. At this stage, you would get your paperwork and your contract with the solicitor all set up properly if you haven't already, and then you would be doing the draft contracts. So the draft contracts are basically you saying what you agreed with to buy and them saying what they agreed to sell. So what does that include? It includes an inventory such as fixtures and fittings. Now, it may seem obvious to some people that when you buy a house you get light fittings, you get the light switches, you get the socket covers, but I have heard in some cases that the seller decided they were going to rip out all the light switches, they were going to take out the socket covers, they were going to take off the doors, they were going to take off the door handles. These are things that they are legally allowed to take if it's not listed that it's included. They can take out anything they really want. You have to have it listed of what's included, apart from the bricks and mortar and windows and doors on the outside of the building. Anything internal is considered fixtures and fittings. They all need to be listed. They might take carpets out, they might take flooring out. They could leave the property a mess if they're taking all that out, because it would be an empty shell and it would be completely different to what you thought you were purchasing. So you would do a draft contract with an inventory and you would check over that you both agreed on what it is that you're buying and selling. Once you've done your draft contract, then you would do your searches. Now these normally all happen at the same time, but this is normally the order that it gets completed in. So the searches is where you would search on the property, which take 1 to 3 weeks to do the searches, and you would search for things like subsidence, mine shafts, radon gas, flood risk, and things like this if it's had storm damage or if you've had anything happening in the area that could affect the building and could potentially cause damage to the building in the future or make it so that it's a hazard to live there, and in the long run possibly make it unmortgageable in the future, which you don't want, because then you can't remortgage and you will have to sell the house at a very discounted price. So you always have the searches done. Now there is such a thing as search indemnity insurance. You can get that, and it will dramatically speed up the process because you won't have to do the searches. It will cost you more, so I wouldn't recommend it unless you are really in a hurry to buy that property. Otherwise, do the searches, because it's always best to know. Otherwise, once you've got the property and you haven't done the searches, you can have issues. So I wouldn't worry about skipping it and getting indemnity insurance unless you're an experienced property investor. Then you could consider going down that route. So then your reports would come back. Once your reports would come back, you would sign everything, and once everything is signed and everything is done, then your part with the solicitor is done. Then there is just the exchange of contracts, where the two solicitors check that both people signed everything, both people are happy, everything's up and running, and then you get to the exchange of contracts. Now at the exchange of contracts is where things can change. So up until the exchange of contracts, either side can pull out legally without any fines or anything, unless you bought the property through auction. If you bought the property through auction, there are possibly fees involved, such as if the property goes back to auction and sells at 80% of what you paid for it, you could be liable to pay them extra so that they don't make a big loss because you've wasted their time, even though you've already paid a 10% generally auction fee. When the hammer goes down, non-refundable. So on exchange, you can exchange and complete on the same day. If you are doing this, you would give the entire funds. So you'd give your deposit if you were buying with a mortgage, and the mortgage company would give the rest, or you would give the 100%. And then the solicitor would have all the money ready for the exchange and the completion, and you'd get the keys at that point. Now the other way of dealing with this part is that when you exchange, you're legally bound into a contract. Now on the exchange, you can give them a deposit, generally a 10% deposit. It's negotiable with them if you feel like negotiating, and you could do a keys undertaking, which means that you exchange contracts, but they'll give you the keys so you could possibly do work or move into the property and have a delayed completion. Once you have exchange of contracts, then you are legally bound to pay the rest of that figure on the time you agreed for the completion. There's no pulling out, there's no renegotiating, it's fixed in stone. If the house prices drop by 50%, you're still going to have to pay the full amount. If the house prices rise by 100%, they still have to sell you at the price you agreed. So this can be an advantage, can be a disadvantage. If you're going to do a lot of work to the property, then it's a way of doing the work. With some mortgage products, they may even allow you to complete and have the increased value of the property. So you could potentially do a refurb with very little money compared to having to buy the entire property and then do it that way. I hope this was helpful. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, click that bell notification icon, get notified of new videos coming out every Tuesday.